Yo, what's cracking, folks? Welcome to episode number 28 of the Painter and the Pixie.
Yeah.
I am your host, Jeremy Vassar, and I am joined by your other lovely host, Serina Vassar.
Yeah, that's me. Hello, everybody.
And in this episode of the podcast, Serina and I are going to be talking about active listening. It's a little intro to active listening.
Yeah, kind of just a little taste, a little bit of, some fun facts and some little bits of things you can practice at home.
Yes, so we're going to go over hug and rescue, which anybody, some of y'all might be familiar with those, particularly those that know Diane, and who will be a future guest.
Mm-hmm.
So,
this was kind of a teaser episode, a little bit of a shorter episode than we've done in the past. We're kind of working on against the clock.
Hey, we did an hour.
We did?
Yeah, we did a full hour, man.
Wow.
Yeah, it's all good.
Right. It's a great episode, guys. I think you'll like it.
Yeah, don't sell yourself short, sweetness. You did an excellent job.
Oh, well, thank you.
All right, guys. Without further ado, please enjoy episode 28 of The Painter and the Pixie.
This is only the beginning.
All right, ready?
Ready?
What you're going to hear about today is nothing short of a miracle.
Well, I don't believe it.
Let's find out. Ready, set, go.
What's up, girl?
Hi, Jeremy.
How are you doing this fine day?
Good. Back in the seat for recording podcast.
Yeah, man. Yeah, so we are, this one will go out slightly later than its normal schedule, so...
It's all right.
Sorry.
I've been very busy this week.
Sorry to all of those, our lovely listeners out there. But we tried to do one before, we stacked them up and stuff. We did one ahead of time, and then neither one of us particularly liked how it turned out. But I think that's all right to talk about.
Yeah.
Sometimes doesn't go as one would hope. And it brings us to our, today we're going to be talking about listening and active listening particularly. And I think, we're going to go over the hug principle. It's just, I think we can stop here for a second and talk, give a little bit of an update.
Sure.
As far as,
go for it.
Kind of where we're at, where Serena's been gone all this past weekend.
Yeah, I was gone Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Right.
Got back, worked all day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Today's Thursday.
Yeah, and then this week
And I leave at 5:30 tomorrow morning.
Yep, but you're not technically out of town. You're just down in Philly for the whole weekend. So it's some super long days teaching for
they're
NTA.
just long because I'm driving. So it's like driving down for 2 hours because of traffic, working the whole day, teaching and all that, and then driving home. So I'm not gone, but I'm gone.
Yeah.
I'm not around.
And then whilst that is going on, I also had a stretch where I worked 14 days straight, and
We've been busy.
a lot of stuff's going on where working on setting up the framework and the website and all this stuff for a new business my brother and I are starting. I'm actually launching another podcast called The Clever Contractor. So I've been talking with our dear friend Megan, who did an awesome job on the logo and the lettering.
Awesome.
She's a champ. Shout out to Megan.
Yay.
And so this weekend I'll be spending a great deal of my time building the website on WordPress, which is not something I'm super familiar with, but
Takes definitely some familiarity, some practice for sure.
And then on top of training in jiu-jitsu and all this stuff, and then we've had just my handiworks painting schedule has been pretty aggressive because we are in it always happens usually around this time in summer where we've got a lot of kind of people wanting to have our services.
Yep.
So
it's all good.
It's just been very
Juggling.
busy and stressful, and kind of came to a head this week, which is why this podcast is coming out a little bit later.
Yeah.
But I, it happens,
right.
and I just want to say that sometimes you give me little tidbits and updates about people that have listened to the show and say nice things and write you text messages and whatever. So because
that stuff means so much.
it really does mean a lot because whether y'all know it or not, this show is quite a bit of work.
It is. It doesn't seem like it because you just get to listen to us have these conversations that are fun.
So
it's a lot of effort.
and this is not coming from a place of me saying you should appreciate that. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just, it's something.
It's nice to be appreciated.
It's very nice to be appreciated, and it's quite a bit of work. It's quite a bit of post-production on my end, and even my cousin editing the video.
And show notes.
And then the show notes that you do. So it's like a lot of extra things on top of all of the other stuff that we're doing. And, it's I was talking to my brother about this, and kind of you and I talked earlier today while I was like 2 stories up on a ladder.
Did not know that.
AirPods are amazing.
Oh my.
So, yeah. But, yeah, it's just talking through things with you and being like, it's hard to care a lot about something and nerd out about it and then not obsess over it to the point where now it's like stressful, particularly when there's all these things going on and lots of things that I have to do. Like we had a product failure at one of the job sites, which has been a huge pain in my butt, and dealing with all of that fallout, which is awesome.
Not fun.
But yeah, you try and particularly something like the podcast, which takes a long time to build, and we have a small but mighty following.
Yeah.
So and I'm really interested to figure out how to grow that, because it seems like the people that are listening are getting a lot out of it.
Yeah.
And you and I have talked about, I think even now's a good time to chat about what's coming. Probably not. I think next week is going to be kind of the second part of active listening.
Yeah.
We're going to go over Rescue, which you guys will find out about.
Yep.
But we're putting together, because of the podcast with my dad, we're working on doing a series that
the
is...
podcast, the Relational Integrity Podcast?
Yes.
Okay.
Where we're going to do a series of maybe like a mini series within the show of how to handle personal crisis.
Yep, I'm very excited about that.
So, and that to me, like when you start focusing on content that is a little less accessible, a little more meaty, and I think can provide a lot of value for people listening and have a tremendous impact. That's the kind of stuff that I really get excited about, and that's what's going to really, help me push through some of the more trying times of production and all of the things that we do. That being said, I super enjoy this.
Yeah, I love doing the show with you. But it does take a lot of effort, a lot of time.
Yeah.
I mean, even with my YouTube channel, doing videos, shooting videos, I might spend an hour shooting film and spend 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours editing it for a 10-minute video.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of time that goes into it. This is all just us doing stuff.
Yeah.
We're not getting money or anything. It's just for fun. I mean, for fun, but also to help people. Like my one friend, former client, sent that great text message where she just was saying she loved the show and our show with your dad, and the Brain States little mini series. That was a little mini series because we had 2 episodes.
That's true. Yeah.
Was great. It's so nice to see and to hear from people that what we're doing matters, that it has been positively impactful in their life. That is huge. That's why we're doing this stuff.
Yeah, and that's been the you mentioned the money thing. Like my goal for this podcast has always been to have a positive impact. So whether it's with your and my relationship, like hopefully that too, but then also the people that listen and are hopefully kind of along for the ride, and then we have access to some people that'll be fairly interesting. If you guys aren't excited about the series that I just mentioned, you really should be, because it's going to be super sweet. So because I contemplated like maybe dropping the YouTube and the video, and then a lot of people once I went and looked over the numbers and stuff, it's actually a decent amount of people like watching it on YouTube. I just think it makes it more accessible, particularly for the mini series we're going to do. So I'm like, no, quit being a turd. Like, it's going to be fine. Like,
it would be less effort to not have to edit video and all of that, but it's all right.
It's fine. In the grand scheme of things, I think it's very worth it. So we're still in it, guys. So just be, we're not stopping or anything. It's just been a little bit. We're at the halfway.
A little hairy the last couple of weeks. A little sticky.
It's been a little bit of a sticky wicket.
Yeah.
But through that, Serina and I have had some excellent conversations. Sometimes people call them like come to Jesus conversations.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if it was that extreme.
They weren't really that extreme at all. But you and I know each other very well, and we use these principles we're going to discuss. We're going to go over a concept that first heard from my friend Diane, and she's very, that's like her jam is active listening, and she's the best listener I think I know.
She's very good.
I'm actually having brunch with her this
Oh,
Sunday.
yeah? That's fun.
I know. I love her.
Nice.
She's gonna be in the series. It's
Yeah,
gonna be good.
it's gonna be
She doesn't know it yet, but she's going to be.
Yeah, she listens. She'll find out soon.
Yeah. So
So I think this is going to be a fun podcast episode too, because like you said, I'm doing group leading assistant, like teaching stuff with the Nutritional Therapy Association. I was just down in the Herndon venue, and now I'm going to the Philadelphia venue, which, yes, Philadelphia, if you guys are listening, awesome. Shout out to you guys. I have been suggesting a Philadelphia venue for 4 years. So I'm so pumped to be a part of the first ever Philadelphia venue.
I didn't know it was the first one.
First one.
That's awesome. Good for you.
Awesome. I know. I'm so excited. Gus is excited
Yeah.
too. They probably can't hear that.
Maybe not. I don't know if it picked
Gus
up or
was
not.
making funny noises. He's sleeping under my chair. But Gus will be going along as well for the first ever Philadelphia venue.
Historical moments. Yep.
I know, it's awesome. So, but I'm excited to do this podcast because I have done a lot of work over the years in what you just mentioned, the phrase active listening. In the Nutritional Therapy Association, part of the curriculum that they help new NTPs, nutritional therapy practitioners, and NTCs, nutritional therapy consultants, to develop is what they call motivational interviewing. So motivational interviewing, which is almost exactly the same thing as active listening.
Okay.
So basically every year that I've been a group leader, I have done a presentation on brain state regulation, which if you missed it, go back and listen, and active listening, as it connects to motivational interviewing. The process of motivational interviewing is all about helping the client come to a resolution on their own. But frankly, that's what active listening is. Active listening is just listening to the person to help them flesh out their own thoughts and feelings and emotions and ideas so that they can come to a conclusion for themselves.
Right.
So the reason I'm saying this is I was just asked, I think just yesterday, even maybe the day before, by one of the members of the instructor team to do a presentation on active listening, on motivational interviewing. And I was like, I am down. I can do that. So happy to be able to do that we're going to do some role playing.
Yeah.
To talk to the students about motivational interviewing / active listening, and then give some examples about what does it look like, what doesn't it look like. And I think it's perfect. I was like, okay, cool. This podcast is going to be a great resource. I'll tell them about it, and then I'll say, if you want to learn more, if you want to hear about it, go check out the podcast.
Yeah.
How great is that?
Yeah, it's going to be sweet.
Love it.
And then we will probably also have Diane touch on this when we do the crisis management.
Well, she's just the master, so
yeah, it's literally Jedi master.
Yeah.
That stuff. So, do you want to just kind of do your spiel since you've kind of done it?
Sure, yeah, we can talk about it, and you can definitely feel free to chime in.
I'm sure I will. I mean, this is something I've learned about. It has to be maybe. I think Diane told me about this when I was a janitor.
Yeah, you knew about active listening skills before I did.
Which meant I was 16, and I would clean her office and then end up talking to her for like 2 hours.
Wow.
So, and it was that was great. Because she was a night owl, so I was there always late. So be like, be the only ones there, and then just chatting to this 16-year-old moron about all my
life,
my woes. As I guess I was a junior in high school, whatever that is. But anyway,
cool.
So yeah, that's when I first heard about it, and
it's really powerful.
It really is, and it's active listening, motivational interviewing, all of this. It basically comes down to, at least for me, being a good listener. That's kind of what we're describing, but we're going to describe like the components of what that actually is, and then probably I think we'll see how far we get in this show and whether or not we're going to talk about what it isn't. I know you're going to touch on that a little bit, but we might do another podcast just dedicated to the parts that are bad. It all depends
on how much time we've got today.
Yeah,
really.
I've got to skedaddle and get to jiu-jitsu a little bit later. So yeah, I'll hand the ball over to you if you're going to do your spiel, because I know we're going to talk about hug. That's kind of where we're going to start.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're right on about active listening. It's really just helping when you're actively listening to someone, you're engaged with what they're saying. You're not just waiting around to interject your next thought, right?
Yeah.
That is super common. That's what happens a lot of times nowadays when you have a conversation with someone. It's like, did you even hear what I said? You're just speaking. You're just spitting out your own thoughts. And I'm sure you've done it too. I've done it. I know, where I'm listening and waiting for a pause in conversation so that I can interject my next thought.
Yeah. I have a good example of this. Like, sweetie, how was your day?
Yeah, my day was pretty good.
That's great. My day was sweet too. And then I just tell a whole story about my day. That's like what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
They like have that. They'll ask you a question just so that you ask them the same question because they have a story related to that question. I've noticed that. That's not active listening.
No, it's not active listening. It's definitely a different form of communication. Not necessarily a bad form of communication. It's just not actively listening to a person.
Right.
So the concept behind active listening or motivational interviewing, like I said a moment ago, is really to help the person that you're listening to flesh out their thoughts and feelings and emotions and ideas even. It can be really helpful. I know you, Jeremy, are a verbal processor. So speaking your thoughts out loud really helps you to solidify and kind of come to terms with the things that you're wrestling with. Mm-hmm. Or even not even wrestling, that might be too strong, but the things that you're just pondering, thinking about.
It's how I process, for sure.
Yeah, a lot of us do that.
Yeah, external verbal processor, for sure. So that's why I'm a big fan.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So I like to, whenever I'm teaching somebody about active listening for the first time, maybe they've never heard of this, maybe they, have not even considered the fact that there is active or inactive listening in the first place, is I like to use the acronym HUG, and this is totally from Diane. This is her analogy that she uses, her acronym all the time. HUG, H-U-G, hear, understand, and give back. So if you kind of keep that in your head, when you're listening to someone, you want to offer them a verbal hug. You want to hear them. You want to show them that you've understood what they've said by giving back a statement which reflects what they were saying. So it's not parroting. It's not just repeating back what someone has said to you. It's kind of almost paraphrasing to your own words so that the person who you're listening to kind of says, okay, yes, you're tracking with me. You've got exactly what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, it's not the parroting thing's important where you're not just repeating verbatim what they told you. You're processing it in your own mind and then kind of sort of summarizing, like a short summary.
Yeah.
And the hearing component, there's a lot of ways to communicate that you are hearing the other person. There are nonverbals like eye contact,
leaning towards the person, your body posture.
Yeah, posture, just kind of looking attentive. You can do like nods and things like that. There's also verbal ones like saying and right, yeah, which I have found through doing this podcast and the other ones I've done before this is if you were the host of a podcast and you're on mic, stick with more of the nonverbals because in normal conversation it sounds fine to say, oh yeah, right, but if you're mic'd up, super annoying.
Yeah, sometimes it can be.
I do them about a quarter less or like 75% less than I normally would is what I'm saying.
Yeah. 3/4 less.
Yeah, 3/4 less. But it's just when I went back and listened to a bunch of my old podcasts, I was like, oh, shut up, Jeremy. Just nod your head. Let them talk. But anyway, so those are some verbal and nonverbal cues to signal to the person that you are engaged in their conversation, that you are hearing them. And then now, what do you usually say about the understanding piece of it?
That's the summarizing part. When you can formulate the other person's thoughts into your own words and the other person thinks that your new formulation is accurate, that's how you show that you've understood what they've said.
Okay. And then, but isn't the summary part the giving back part?
And right, so they're connected.
Okay, because almost the understanding is internal, and then the giving back is your external summary of it to the person.
Right, and kind of exactly what you just did right here is summarized. We had this little summary back and forth, and it was inaccurate, right? Something was not correct, and it gives the other party a chance to help correct you.
Right.
But in a non-aggressive sort of way. It's very gentle and soft and kind. So I might summarize, wow, Jeremy, it sounds like you had a really busy day today, and it's kind of frustrating that you have to be way up high on the ladder. And you might say, well, no, I don't mind being up on the ladder. It's just the fact that it's really hot out and I've got a lot of other things on my plate. And then now you've changed. I've reflected back. it was inaccurate, but you gave me accurate feedback.
Yeah, clarifying statement. Yeah, yeah. And then that's how you communicate effectively and then understand each other.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So do you want to do a little bit of role playing here?
Sure.
Practicing active listening
Yeah.
skills.
Am I actively listening right now?
Sure, you can be actively.
Am I trying to screw it up or actually do a good job?
Do a good job.
Okay.
Yeah. So what's a question you could ask me?
Let's see. What else do you have to do before you leave tomorrow?
Oh, that's a good question. So my car is packed up with my yoga mat, my massage table, my Berkey water filter, my travel filter, and most of Gus's gear. But I have to pack his food. I have to pack my food. I have to get together his clothing, for lack of a better term, his vest, his prong collar, his e-collar, all of that. And put together my little package of goodies. So I signed up for a couple of things to bring scissors and double-sided tape and supplies for the workshop weekend. So I've got all that sitting all over our kitchen table.
Oh, yeah. I do see that.
That's what the mess is.
All right. Cool. So yeah, sounds like you have a little bit more to go as far as packing and all of that jazz. But yeah, is your clothes packed up and everything?
Yeah, I'm not really packing clothes since I'm not spending the night.
That's a fair point. Good call.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're probably all right then.
I think so. I think I don't need to really pack anything. I might pack a sweatshirt.
Nice. Well, it sounds like you're about ready to go then.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, pretty good.
In conclusion.
Yeah. So you had
How's
some
that?
nice reflection statements.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. What I like to try to do to help students learn this concept is you don't really want to ask questions. You asked a lot of questions back to me, which is great, clarifying questions, but that's not exactly the same thing as actively listening.
Yeah, I guess with the questioning part, I know it's part of RESSQ, which we're going to maybe talk about later, but
Yeah.
I think you can do it in a way that you're asking clarifying questions that are actively, that's what Diane, at least that's my understanding.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely correct.
Also, perhaps that was a bad setup question because it wasn't something that you really needed to process because
That's
you
true.
already were just kind of stating facts. It wasn't like something that you are stressing about or needing to like process out where like you're just saying these are the things and I said those are the things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's try another one. I'll be the listener.
Ooh, all right.
And you can make up whatever you want to make up. I'm going to ask you a prompt as if you were one of my clients.
Ooh, sounds interesting.
This is what I do with a lot of my new clients. Not everybody, because you kind of have to know your audience who you're talking to, and I don't want people to feel like they're just, rehearsed things. I like to ask most of my new clients if I had a magic wand and I could wave my magic wand and solve one problem for you, what would that problem be?
Ooh, I like that.
Now, before you answer that, here's what I'm going to do. So you can see, people who are listening or watching, you can see the progression of what active listening looks like. A lot of times we do this and we don't realize we're doing it, but it is so powerful for the person you're listening to when you can execute efficiently, effectively. So what I'm going to do is, for every one question that I ask, I'm going to look for 3 reflection statements in return. Now, a reflection statement is just kind of repeating to you, paraphrasing back to you what you've said to make sure I'm on the right track. There's no question mark at the end. My deflection goes down. It doesn't go up. And it's just so that I can continue to get feedback from you.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So magic wand. I'm going to need some clarification on this magic wand. How magical is it? Like, can it do anything or just like solve personal health and fitness things?
So, for the sake of example, it can do anything. Because I said if I have a magic wand and I could solve one of your problems, what would that look like for you?
Well, I'd really like to fly, but my brother and I were talking about hover boots today, but that was separate category. We'll stay. I'll.
You can stick with flying. That's fine.
That's fine. It's fine.
I can definitely reflect back some things about flying.
We'll stick with the health and fitness kind of area because it's kind of more in your wheelhouse. I would like to be, if you're going to wave a magic wand, I'd like to be like 185 pounds and like lean. So, but still retain my muscle. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
So breaking that under that sub 200 pound mark matters to you.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah. And what are you smiling for?
No, you're just doing it. So I'm just laughing at it. Yeah.
So being under that 200-pound mark, there's something about that is more important to you than being above that 200-pound mark.
Yes, it has more to do with, one, longevity, two, with my recent running goals. I would like to be lighter because the lighter I am, the faster I can run. So that's kind of my...
So you have less weight to move around while you're running.
Correct, yeah. So, and when I set my personal best around Lake Galena, I think I was in 11th grade, and I was 165, 170 pounds, which I'm way more muscled than I was then.
That's true.
But I would like to still be... I want to be closer to where when I was super into fight training, like that 185 to 195 mark. That's where I feel lighter and leaner and stronger and healthier. So.
Okay. So you remember how that felt, and that felt really good to you.
Yes, it did. Yep.
So
I feel very athletic, very explosive, and I think I can still have enough muscle mass at that weight to then still do all the things that I want to do, be able to have enough weight to handle myself in jiu-jitsu and still be able to run the speed that I want to. So.
Kind of have both of your feet firmly planted in both of the worlds that you really, really want to be in.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
So
how was that? Did you feel like I was listening?
Yes, I did. Yeah, it felt like I was in your office.
Yeah.
But it's just because I've heard you do that like a gang of times.
Yeah, it's all genuine. It's not fake. But like, look at how much wonderful information you shared with me about that. I learned a whole lot about why. I didn't have to ask you, why is running important to you? Why is being that low of a weight or lower of a weight important to you? Yeah. You just shared all that wonderful information with me, and you didn't feel like I was just making you a science project, right?
Right.
Well, I should ask you, how did that feel to you? I know we're role playing, but how did that feel to you?
No, it feels natural because most of your questions, all of your questions are not pointed, which is or double barreled or. You all right there?
Just spilled some Zevia. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. So, yeah, you had no double binding questions. You didn't put me on the defensive where I felt like I was getting interrogated. It was more of a genuine interest, and the questions you did ask were all like clarification points or almost not quite like leading statements, but rephrasing. Like you said a lot of, so it sounds like, or it sounds to me like those types of things, which is, I can't refute that. If you say something like, oh, it sounds to me like you mean this, it's like, oh, well, that's how it sounded to you. So even if I had to correct something, I'm not offended because you're not putting words in my mouth.
Right. So you can refute it. You can disagree with what my summary is.
Right.
But I'm not coming at you with an accusation sort of, it's not attacking.
Right. Because you didn't say, you said this. You're saying, it sounded to me like you said something like this. So it's not as like, it wouldn't put something on the, not that we were talking about something that I would get defensive about, but
some people do. And it's where it's okay I find that having those sort of reflection statements really helps to diffuse stressful situations, because honestly, a lot of people who come into my office have some pretty significant health concerns or, goals, and it can be really difficult to talk about, or maybe they've seen other nutritional therapists or other people in the past, or other, not necessarily nutritional therapists, but like training people, whatever, and they can't reach their goals, and it can seem very stressful. So can we give an example of a bad
sure
listening?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So if I could wave a magic wand for you, Jeremy.
So are you the crappy listener?
Yeah.
So should I do like pretty much the same thing?
You can do the same thing.
Or can I pick a different one?
You can pick a different one,
Okay.
Whatever you want.
Oh, we'll stick with the same one. So that way you can like talk. Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. So if I could wave a magic wand and change one thing for you about your health or fitness goals or whatever brings you here to my office, what might that be?
I'd like to be between like 185 and 195 pounds.
Do you think you're fat?
Ooh, there is an aesthetic element to it. So, I would
You're
like to be... You're
not fat. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Now I kind of feel like I might be fat and I should be more worried about that. But, it's more for like athletic reasons and some fitness goals that I have that are like related.
So you don't think that you can be fit or athletic when you're at the weight that you're at? Like, this is terrible, right? Do you feel like this is so much more stressful?
It's so
I
aggressive.
feel stressful here.
It's so aggressive.
But some people do that. Some people think that that's listening.
Well,
and that's not to be frustrating.
Let's go back into
Yeah,
it. Let's go back into okay. So you just said, I can't keep a straight face. All right, I believe you just said something that I can't be athletic at the weight I currently am.
So you're telling me you can't be athletic at the current weight you're at?
It's just more. It's more challenging, and I'm much slower at this weight. Okay. So I'm trying to get more explosively athletic, which I also don't want to maintain an enormous amount of muscle mass. I just think it would be health-wise beneficial to be lighter and leaner, particularly on the overall load on my body.
Okay, so here's what you have to do is just eat less calories and run more.
Yeah.
I mean, then you'll get there.
Sweet. Sounds like a great plan.
Yeah.
I will do all of those things.
Yeah, so that's your magic wand.
It's perfect. Yeah.
Just kidding, guys. I am totally just kidding. That is not it. But even listening, I'm totally making this stuff up. This is not, I would never say this to somebody. I'm trying to be abrasive here. And it is abrasive. I mean, I'm sure even people listening are like, whoa, this makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Totally uncomfortable. And your body language, we're role playing, but you even got tighter crossing your legs, turning a little bit more away from me.
Well, this is a
more guarded stance.
More guarded for sure if you're crossed up the way that I am right now. And usually if people are more open to the person they'll actually cross the other way, so they're more receptive this way. I'm tilted more instead of just being kind of like rolling my shoulders over and kind of closing myself off to you. But
which happens automatically. Like you just did that and it didn't even realize, because that was super abrasive. But I've heard people interact with other people in that type of really strong, forceful I made a lot of assumptions about you. I did a lot of accusations towards you. I made you question yourself and feel like crap, because you have this goal. And that's not at all what active listening is about. That's not solving anyone's problems. So I'm going to bring this in here because I think it will fit well. Rescue. Active listening, hugging someone, is not rescuing them. We don't rescue.
Yes.
Now, this rescue is spelled different than what you think. It's not like English.
Is another Diane situation.
RESSQ.
Okay.
Rescue. Reassure. Oh, it's fine. The weight you're at is fine. Reassure.
Yep.
Explain. Well, all you have to do is eat less calories and run more. Not listening.
Nope.
Solve.
Oh, as men.
Men do this all the time. And that's because they're trying to help. I get it. And I don't want to totally stereotype just men, but men are more prone to solving problems than, sometimes the women will say, well, I wish he would just listen to me instead of solving the problem.
Yeah. And from my observation, it's particularly when I am in problem-solving mode all day, sometimes it's hard to flip that knob over to listen. And whenever someone, regardless of gender, if your wife says, I wish he would just listen to me or whatever, what she's saying is I want him to give me a hug. They want you to listen with the verbal hug, the hear, understand, give back. That's all they want. They don't, I've had this with you before where I've jumped in and, it's because guys talk to guys differently. So when my brother and I chat, when he tells me something, I just give him the solution. So it's very direct like that, where a lot of times when we have chats, it's sometimes it's problem solving, but a lot of times it's not. It's just
listening,
processing through things.
And it seems to me when you talk with Josh and you said, when guys talk to guys, you're in problem solving mode, and that's a different mode.
Right.
Which is totally fine.
Well, it's usually business stuff or jujitsu is it's all problem solving oriented. So it's where do you put your arm? How do you do this? Or with my brother, it's, do we have paint for this? Do we have that? So it's all problem solving things.
Yeah. You're not, correct me if I'm wrong, you're not really listening to Josh's problems and helping him to solve his to listen and work through his own problems.
It's sometimes it just depends, but most of the mode we're in is just frogging around and having a good old time.
Yeah. So rescue is reassure, explain, solve, share, which I didn't share with you in this example. Share would be like, oh man, dude, I was 218 pounds myself, and I just did all this stuff, and I drank this special diet tea, and I joined a run club, and now I'm 115 pounds, and it's great.
There you go.
Right? Like, that's sharing. Sharing is fine, and there's an appropriate time to use sharing. There's an appropriate time to use solving, just like you described.
Yeah.
But it's not listening.
Yeah, and a lot of times I feel like the attempt to share is almost an attempt to empathize with the person's problems, where you're trying to signal that I've also experienced something similar. Because a lot of times correct me if I'm wrong, but when the hug is most important is when someone has experienced some sort of like personal crisis or something, or is in distress and is trying to like work through something. Maybe it's maybe not like a big trauma, but maybe like a small trauma, or they have like a little problem in their relationship or whatever. And that's when they just need to be heard, not necessarily like, oh, well, let me tell you about my shitty relationship, something like that. That's not what there's things to be processed. It's not just a, story time.
Things to be processed and things to be validated.
Yeah.
That your feelings matter. So another thing that when you were talking about, like, you felt really good when you were younger and at a lighter weight, and you were fighting and you were really springy and all of that. Like, I could have keyed in on that and said, you felt really good about yourself in that time. Right. And that helped you to feel really strong and powerful, and whatever it is. Like, you can key in on some of those. You can add some labels of emotions for that person. A lot of what I see in my office is people who have, because I work so heavily in the world of digestion and digestive dysfunction, there are people who've had some really significant digestive problems, like never having a solid bowel movement in their whole life since they were born. And people just poo-poo that.
Hey-o.
No pun intended. And like belittle those things. But that matters. That is like a really stressful thing. And you can reflect to that person, man, it sounds like you have been through quite a lot in your journey. And, you've taken a lot of steps, a lot of risks. And here you are now kind of feeling like you're at the end of your rope. And validating that person's feeling matters so much, because what you said about being in personal struggle, a lot of times people don't realize that that's how they've felt about a situation until someone gives them permission to feel those feelings. And that's your job as the hugger, as the motivational interviewer, as the listener, to help people to feel like they matter. Yeah,
and giving them a safe space to kind of explore those things. Whether it's, your wife, your husband, friends, close, whatever. All right. So we did RESS.
Yeah. Reassure, explain, solve, share, and Q is question.
Okay.
So active listening, hug. Yes, the questions, you can ask clarifying questions, but that's why I tried to show the example of giving reflective statements for every question, because questioning is great, but it's not listening. All of these things, reassuring someone, you need to do that sometimes, right?
Yeah.
It's okay. Things are going to be okay. You're not always going to feel like this, right? You've said that to me a bunch of times. That's explaining, okay, you might feel really bad right now, but you're not going to always feel like this. There are things you can do about it. You can, that was not a very pleasant experience. Let's get through to the other side. Solving. Sometimes you got to solve the problem. Okay, so what we're going to do here is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Solve the picture. Share. I experienced something like this and I got through it to the other side. You can too. What are we going to do next? Tell me more about this situation. Like, all of those aspects of rescue are really helpful, really useful tools, but they're not exactly listening.
Right.
That's where it gets sticky.
Yeah.
And you use them, especially so active listening is slightly different than motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing, you do use some of those rescue tactics, those tools, so to speak.
Yeah.
Purposefully.
Yeah.
But you still need to show that you're listening.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And I think too, it's important to point out that like the rescue portion that we went over is not, it can be used malevolently. Like, people can use questions to like pin you down and kind of interrogate you when you're trying to share something.
That's a good point.
But it's a lot of times there's no malevolence in a lot of the habits, because a lot of the things that Serina listed off with the rescue are habitual. Like, always interject. Like you probably have a friend that always suggests a solution to your problem, or
We'll just do this.
or the one of sharing stories. That's big. Like a lot of people, I did that. I can do that.
I still
for
do
sure.
that a
Yeah,
lot,
yeah,
especially
yeah.
in my office.
Yeah. Well, sometimes people have terrible stories, and I have good stories. So
But and sometimes there's a place for it. I mean, traditionally speaking, or I shouldn't say traditionally, typically speaking, in nutritional therapy with the NTA, the program, they say don't tell personal stories about yourself. But frankly, sometimes I think it's helpful.
oh yeah,
When you have a clear picture where you can share and you can show someone that other people have gone from start to finish and it's possible, that's super, super helpful. But it's not listening. If someone's telling you, I've had this digestive problem. I went to the Philippines and came back and I had this intestinal parasite and I've never been the same since. And I can't gain weight and I have horrible cramps and diarrhea and all these problems. What they need in that moment is not necessarily part of active listening is what does this person need in the moment, not what's going to make me feel better. So it might make me feel better to say, oh, you know what? Intestinal parasites are really common and a lot of people can get over them. And if you've got good stomach acid, that's your body's first line of defense against parasites. So as long as we stick to the plan and we can, now I'm explaining and I'm sharing and I'm maybe asking little questions here and there. So when did you first feel bad and when did you first start feeling better and what were the things that worked for you? Now this person just feels like a number.
yeah. They feel like a data point.
A data point.
Yeah.
Right. You're just collecting information. You're not listening. Listening, I mean, this is what is so powerful and important in what I do is I want people to know that they matter. I know I've brought this up tons of times, but I want them to not feel like they're a number because with me, they're not a number. I want to listen and I want to be able to say, wow, you have been through a lot.
Yeah.
That's a great listening statement. You have tried so hard to get your health back on track. And it seems like everywhere you go is a dead end.
Right. So it sounds like to me when you, using your intake example, we did the weight thing with me, whatever. But like in a real, like the one you just mentioned, someone who has parasites or something, I think with active listening and hug particularly, there is a kind of like a time for it. There's a correct application for it because in your example, the person is coming in and explaining like, these are my symptoms. They have something they want to get out. They came to you. So from what you've said, you want to then use active listening to then draw out and then, or just give them a safe place to talk through. Like, this is all the things I've been through. I've got this parasite. I've been on this journey for years and I don't have any control over it. I'm like at the end of my rope with all this stuff. And like, that's the time to listen. And then once they kind of get through that wave of things, then you can start moving towards like, okay, now this is because you're kind of the leader in that situation where like you're going to be pace setting and saying like, this is how we're going to then solve your issues. Once they feel that they have been heard because they've actually been heard, then you can start moving and actually doing the things where you're, the rescue portion of things. So like rescue is not technically bad. It's just not
listening. It's not the same thing as listening. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So did I kind of hit that?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
That was perfect. And that's true because when we're talking about active listening, the difference between straight up plain old active listening, verbally hugging someone, and the motivational interviewing component is where you say, okay, you've done a lot of listening, a lot of hugging. And then you say, okay, and you're coming to me because of my expertise and I will help you solve the problem. Here's the path that we can go down together.
Yeah.
But you have to build a level of trust, right? You can't just say, all right, I've been there. I'll take you back to the other, here's point A and I've been to point A to point B a billion times. Come with me.
Yeah.
You can. I mean, I'm sure that works for some people, but most people who come to talk to me, for example, if we're talking about a nutritional therapy perspective, have kind of been through the ringer.
Yeah.
A lot of times. They've been and tried and done and talked to all the people and all the things. And
well, and I'll say that is also true for in the space of contracting.
Yeah.
A lot of my clients, just to give a different example in a slightly different context, my brother and I have a painting contracting company that we've been owning and operating for 14 years now, something like that. Hence the painter, that's me. So a lot of times when I am first introduced to a client, I meet a client for the first time. It's usually doing a quote at their house. A lot of my clients have had poor experiences with other contractors in the past. And a lot of times I spend my first moments just listening to their story, and they show me things in their house, and it would be tempting to just be like, okay, like what is it that you want me to do, and like cut through that stuff. But it's the time that I take to listen to their issues and kind of say like, okay, that may be that I can tell that you've had maybe some harder times with some past contractors. Great example is this is when you just want to hear, understand, and give back. Is I had a client call me that was absolutely furious with us, and it was because my brother and I think I shared this example way back in the day. I think we did a podcast on client interaction.
Yeah, we did.
But it was when my brother and I transferred accounts where
yes, I remember.
I used to manage our corporate accounts, and then Josh handled the residential, and then I moved back to handling the residential, and Josh handled our bigger commercial accounts. So then I deal with a lot more customers because we only have a few commercial accounts. But anyway, in that switchover, we lost some paperwork, and it was a little rocky. So we lost track of this one client, and he called me and was furious. I had literally nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
It was all like, that one was completely on I've definitely done messed up stuff before, but this one was completely on my brother, and he was pissed. He was an old retired police officer, and just as soon as I answered my phone and he verified who I was, he just lit into me. It was just screaming, and it was just one of those, hold the phone away. I was like, whoo. And I'm like, dude, I had nothing to do with this. So, but that's not what I said.
Howler,
that's not what I said. I was just like, I'm like, you know what? I'm like, sir, I'm really sorry. I'm like, that's all our fault. It's, I completely, that's our bad. And, I'm truly sorry. It sounds like you're really frustrated. You're frustrated that no one got back to you, and that you've kind of been left in the lurch. And that's just, Josh and I, transferred accounts, and that's, I just kind of, validated everything that he said. I did not defend myself and say like, it'd be easy for me to get defensive, be like, yo, man, I didn't have anything to do with this, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But I let him kind of get it all out, and then reframed kind of what he said to me. And then once we got through that point, then I was able to be like, now what can I do for you moving forward? And then that was years ago, and he's one of my best clients, favorite guys. I love that dude.
Awesome.
So, but that just at that moment, if I had handled it slightly differently and got defensive and then yelled back at him, I wouldn't have this relationship that I have with him now. And that was like one of those moments where, even when someone's pissed at you, it's hard. That's when it's harder to give a hug if they're really upset. So, but yeah, so it has applications in many settings. So.
And honestly, you hit the nail on the head, I think, when you talked about that, because actively listening really helps to diffuse very stressful situations.
Yeah.
Because really big factor in active listening, hugging, these things, is listening for the subtext. What's going on beneath the surface. And that's how I like to teach it to students as well, how to help them understand what they're looking for when they're offering reflective statements. Is what about people choose their words? You could have a billion different sentences come out of your mouth, and you chose these words and this sentence to describe what's going on for you. Why?
Yeah.
What's underneath of that? So this guy was really angry that you totally blew him off and forgot about him, right? And you validated, I am so sorry. We totally forgot. You're right. You have every right to feel frustrated. And you reflected that. That frustration was underneath the surface.
Yep.
It wasn't just anger, because anger is not a specific emotion. It kind of is, but you can get much more specific than that. Angry, no, frustrated, no, I feel totally abandoned. I paid this money and did not get service, so I feel gypped, right? Those can all be forms of anger. So you're listening for that and trying to reflect back an accurate response to this person.
Yeah. And I think having, much like the relational integrity framework that we went over with my dad, understanding that there are more effective ways to listen to someone is giving you tools that in a stressful situation and something where there's a lot of emotions and like kind of heated emotions thrown around. If you have hug kind of in your mind, like, okay, how do I hear this person? How do I communicate to them that I'm hearing them, that I understand what they're saying? And then how can I like give that back to them somehow? it gives you some tools to handle some situations that are can be a little tense. And I think coming back to the solving thing, that's a really tempting kind of tactic to try and use. You just want to fix it. And it's a noble like kind of thing that you want to do. That's a really nice desire that you want to fix it and make it better. But sometimes that's not what's needed in the moment. Most of the time it's not needed. There's a time for problem solving and finding solutions and moving forward. But a lot of people do not feel listened to. And I think when you come in, and I think that's why Diane sets it up with rescue, because people want to rescue the person, and using those tactics, that's kind of how they do it, when in fact they may not need to be rescued. They just need to be felt like they're being heard.
Yeah.
And that's like, and it can be clunky to use some of these things and try and like, okay, I'm hearing them. And like, you might not be that great at it when you start out, but you practice, you become super smooth. So when we're going to have Diane on the show in a few weeks,
she's amazing.
She can actively listen, and you have no, I know that she's doing it, and she still tricks me. It's so annoying.
She doesn't trick you. She just gets under your defenses.
It's so good, dude. She's like a little ninja. It's just like, it's very impressive. And then you're like, no, I know what she's doing. And then it's been like 2 hours. You're like,
but it's so genuine.
It really is genuine.
It really is. And that makes a big difference. Yeah.
So, and you can definitely deploy it for nefarious reasons, but we hope that people will use it in a genuine kind of loving manner. But anyway, Diane's a stud at it. It's just, it's super impressive. And you do not, it's not like this person's fake or anything like that. It's just super, super smooth. So my dad's also very good at it as well. But anyway, what were we going to say?
Practice. I try to be good at it. Sometimes I'm not so good.
It's hard. Well, it takes intention to do it. And I think it even comes back to like what I used to always say is like, give a shit and don't be an asshole.
Yeah,
like that's kind of like the intent behind it. It's like, just care about the person and try and pay attention. That's kind of like a big part of the battle right there, just to put your own thoughts aside for a minute and just try and help them work through their stuff if they need to be heard, whoever it may be. So what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to make two connections. So first I wanted to offer an example to our audience about active listening versus rescuing.
Okay.
Personal. This is one we've talked about on your old podcast, Jeremy Unsolicited. So setting the stage, I like my coffee and you like good coffee, and we sort of do our French press all the time, and we have our one big French press and then we have the little French press, and I used to always bring the little French press with me whenever I go to these workshop weekends. So this was several weekends ago. This was like, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago now.
Okay.
A while ago. And I got to my hotel and I unpacked all my stuff, and then I texted you and was like, crap, I forgot the French press.
I remember the story now, sorry.
Yeah. And I was so upset. I was like, I'm so stupid. Like, not really, but in your head you go through these stupid reactions to things. It's like, how could I be so dumb? I'm the person who's prepared. I've got the checklist. I check everything off the list. I'm responsible. And I forgot that I brought the coffee. The ground coffee, but I forgot the French press. This is useless to me. So I texted you, and from my perspective, I was looking for someone to listen. This is a great juxtaposition of like male, female, typical responses to things, or like I should say, person who wants to be heard and person who's rescuing. You did a very kind thing, and it was, for you, it was perfectly logical. You were like, okay, we'll just go buy a new French press.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you've got the problem of no French press. Go buy a $5 French press from like Marshall's. Go do it. That's fine. It's not a big deal. You can spend $5 on a French press.
Right.
Which is great in that context. If I was texting you, now texting is tricky as well.
Yeah. I was going to point that out.
If I was texting you to say, how do I solve this problem? Buy a new French press. Perfect. Right on. But in the moment, what I was looking for was validation and comfort in a way for you to hear me and say, wow, it sounds like you feel kind of bad that you didn't remember the French press, but you know what? That's okay. It doesn't make you a terrible person. It doesn't make you irresponsible. It doesn't mean that you're a failure, that you forgot to pack the French press. And you know what? Something you could do about it? Probably just go buy one for $5. Like, not a big deal. Yeah. That to me, I would have felt so much better. I would have been like, so nice. Validation, hear, understand. Oh man, it's really a bummer that you did all that work. You brought the coffee and you forgot the press.
Yeah. Right? Which I would never do on text message. Like that's the issue too, is you just you ping me with I remember getting the text message and I'm like, well, just get a new French press. It's because I don't hear any of what you just said had we been talking. And in context, I have grown up with my brother. Every time we go on vacation, Josh forgets something, and the first thing we do is unpack, figure out he forgot, and then drive to wherever we need to go to get like flip-flops. Yeah. Like, oh, dude, I don't have flip-flops. All right, let's go to CVS, get you flip-flops. Like that's like a common thing for me to be like,
problem-solving mode. I get it. Right. And it wasn't. I didn't feel like mad at your response. It was just after thinking about it, I was like, oh, that's not exactly what I was looking for. But now I know. Just listen to me, please. Text you. Just listen to me. No solving, no rescuing.
Yeah. I know dealing with, like, having been married to you for almost 4 years now, like I don't, well, there's a certain amount of us dealing with each other for sure.
That's true.
But just getting smoother at it, and then I'm like, no solutions yet. Just see what she wants.
Well, right, because sometimes, like, I didn't know when I said, oh, I forgot the French press. I didn't know until I thought about it and like basically listened to myself that I was feeling inadequate. Right, that was the feeling underneath. That was the subtext underneath. Was like, I can't believe I'm the responsible person and I forgot this thing. Yeah. But that doesn't make you irresponsible. It doesn't make you inadequate. It just means you forgot the French press.
And then sometimes before you would feel like you shouldn't spend more money on something. So I would just be like, just green light it, go get it.
Right. And that's true too. It's like, we already have one at home. Why would I buy another one?
Right. So anyway, but as you can see, folks, there was no malice on my end. And there was just also text messages,
it is different with
a little bit of a clunky way to communicate.
But I still think it's a nice example because that's what we do a lot of times. I mean, whenever I run this that sounds terrible, this exercise, that's the word I'm looking for, with students, the protocol has been for students to practice with each other and for the asker, the listener, to like ask for real examples from the student, and that stresses me out a little bit because as students, you're not good listeners, and sometimes you can inadvertently, accidentally really make someone feel horrible.
Right.
By accident. Yeah. I like role-playing better. I think role-playing is a little bit softer and safer at the beginning as you're learning and developing and honing your skills of listening.
I think keeping it in a slightly fictitious realm is not a terrible idea. Just get a little few degrees separation.
Yeah.
So, and I have one. Did you have another?
I did have one more point. Okay. You might be on the same point of this, but I wanted to say that if you have listened to our podcast on brain state regulation, focusing and truly actively listening is a serious, awesome, phenomenal way to keep yourself regulated. Keeps you way up in the brain because you have to be creative. You have to be able to think abstractly and put together pieces and come up with solutions. Now, I think that active listening and practicing this hug strategy is actually, while it's hard to do, is so useful if you're dealing with someone who is dysregulated to keep yourself from becoming dysregulated.
Right.
Or even if you feel like you're becoming dysregulated and more stressed or whatever, if you can pop yourself up to the observer role.
Oh man, I was just going to say that.
Yeah, I knew you were going there. Pop yourself up into the observer role. The observer is the person who can do active listening well.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's your boom. Cognitive. You are right up in the top of your brain with an N, brain, right at the top of your brain. No problem.
Right.
It's so useful. If you can flip that switch to say, how am I going to hug this person? Even if you totally disagree, even if they're yelling at you and they're mad at you for something that may or may not be accurate, listen for that subtext. What is this person angry about? What is this person yelling at me for? If they're screaming and saying, well, you never listen to me and you know that's not true. You know you listen to this person. So what is behind that? What's underneath of that? Pop into a hug roll. Actively listen. It sounds like you're really hurt right now. Yeah, I am really hurt because blah, blah, blah. And then they help you to dig at the problem. And eventually you get to the point where they say, you know what? This is a sore spot for me, and this one thing always niggles at me. And it's not that you never ever listen to me or that you never ever do these things. It's that in this moment I felt really vulnerable and attacked or what have you. Or like me, I felt like stupid for forgetting the French press. That's what it was about. It was not actually about the fact that I forgot the French press.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does. And I think the observer role is another thing we'll probably be touching on in the future with my dad. That'll be a good one. If anyone's curious about the observer role, just think of like Yoda. It's just kind of like you've got a few degrees of separation from the things that are going on. You're more kind of, like we said, observing. And then like the hug is another skill that you can kind of add to your toolkit. That is
tool in your toolbox.
It's another tool in your toolbox that will keep you regulated. It also gives you something to focus on when things are getting stressful because it's like, okay, I'm going to use this technique in this kind of, it's like mental jujitsu, like where you're giving yourself a safe place to like be in your mind, and then it gives you something to do almost and something to focus on instead of just being in that moment with someone who's dysregulated and, might be having a hard time. And then I just wanted to mention one of my favorite active listening phrases that I got from Diane, which is one of her favorites as well. If someone comes at you hard in the paint with something, like you did this and like, or maybe they're pissed at their friend and they're saying like,
how could you possibly?
Or being like, yeah, can you believe this jackass like cut me off and is a jerk and is like trying to steal my whatever. And what Diane, just that may be. And so it's a validating statement that then you can lead into other things. And I love it. It's just, I like it so much that when I'm around Diane and like people who know her, we'll say it to each other. Like they say something, you just say it after anything. Be like, oh, that may be. But it's so good. But that's one of my favorites.
Thanks for sharing that. I use that all the time without even realizing it because what you exactly said, it's a validating statement that does not make it good or bad, evil, not, you know what I mean, malevolent, benevolent. It just validates. I'm so frustrated right now. I cannot believe my sister said this. Like, well, that may be.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's quite frustrating for you. It sounds like it's really difficult for you to manage.
Yeah, it's a good kind of segue into other things and validating that may be the state of things. So on that note, we got to wrap this beast up.
That's true. You got to get out here to jiu-jitsu.
We got to do the intro and outro, and then I got to go get choked out. So
and choke other people out.
Hopefully.
Maybe you're not doing so much active listening during that moment. That's like, or rescuing. You're like trying to
go to sleep.
Choke this out.
Nicely done, lady.
Yeah, thanks. Good episode.
All right. See you guys.
And that is it for us, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. That was a really fun episode to do. And I could not believe an hour came and went. We were going for a whole hour.
Straight through, man.
It was like 30 minutes. Just like, blink, we're done.
Cruising.
So, yes, that was episode 28.
Yes.
Active listening. So for show notes, you guys can find those show notes on our website, thepainterandthepixie.com, and various platforms for podcast listening, YouTube and all of that too. You can follow us on Instagram for show updates and fun little tidbits throughout the week at The Painter and the Pixie.
Yes, indeedy. And we will be back next week, which will be probably in like a couple days since I'm posting the show a little bit later. And yeah, I think that's it. We told you guys already about the mini-series we're working on. We're super pumped. That may come out. We might start that next week. It might be the following week, depending on how the schedule goes.
Right. Sounds good.
With all the craziness.
And the last thing I think I'll say is thanks. I know I said this already, but thanks so much for listening and offering us feedback. That means so much to us. So if you want to offer feedback through iTunes or on the YouTube channel, whatever it is, like that is so awesome. It helps us to keep going, and like we love what we do, but it's so nice to have some of that. You guys, that's almost like you're actively listening to us.
Yes.
Showing us that you are appreciated. It's awesome.
I will even take secondhand comments that you tell Serina, because some of you guys actually know her personally. So I appreciate hearing those things as well, because a lot of times it seems like I'm just speaking into the ether, and it's nice to know that we're having a positive impact. And we're pumped to keep going, growing this thing, growing the audience, and providing some more, hopefully better and better, super awesome material for you guys. And just a side note, I was going through I found the original Painter the Pixie episode from Jeremy Unsolicited. Wow. And I was like, maybe this would be fun to air as like a bonus episode. And I was like, I sound like a retard. So I'm like, I can't do it. I'm not going to do that.
We've had a little practice since then.
There's been improvements. So I think that's good. And I enjoy getting more proficient, better at communicating. And I think that's fun. And I'm pumped to see what the future holds, and to, come at the show with renewed vigor.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
Anything else, Sweetness?
That's it. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, too, for doing this show with me.
Thank you, sweetie, for all the... we gave each other lots of hugs as far as getting through all this stuff. So anyway, we will see you guys in a few days, I guess.
In the next episode.
In the next episode.
In
the meantime, y'all relax, be kind to one another, and have a good one.
Bye.
See you.
Amazing.